to run too much into the lunch period. Obviously, with a topic like this, search recommendation and discovery, we could be here all afternoon. We could be here all day. And that's one of the challenges of programming an event like this, is realizing that there are topics that really deserve and even have conferences of their own, but that we're trying to sort of fit everything into an hour or 45 minutes. And unfortunately, this session only has 45 minutes. So I don't want to waste any time on introductions. Most of you are in this room for a reason, so we don't need to explain why search recommendation and discovery are so important. But we are going to begin with each of our panelists doing a brief introduction of themselves. And Mark Robertson from Real SEO is going to start, and he is going to start by presenting some recent research and statistics. Don't worry, this is not going to be a death by PowerPoint type of session. And then after the introductions, we'll basically just start talking. You know, we've got some seed questions, we've got some topics that we've planned out ahead of time, but certainly the more it can turn into a discussion among all of us in the room, and the more that the speakers can answer your questions or respond to your concerns, the better the session will be, I think. So, but first, Mark Robertson from RealSEO.com. Mark, you want to introduce yourself? And
sure, I'll go to the slides so we can get that. Hi, so you can hear me all right, yeah? I'm Mark Robertson. I run a site called Real SEO, and for a long time I've been focused on SEO, and so while the panelists will have some great information on recommendation engines and sort of connected devices and television, my focus has always been more so on search engines, Google, social, and things like that. But I have some recent research I wanted to show you guys with regard to the power of both social and search. So if you forgive me for 1 second here. Okay, so this is some research released last week from Brightcove and TubeMogul, and it's with regard to, there's actually quite a bit of information. I encourage you to go to their site and download it. But specifically with regard to search and social and discovery, they saw that in Q1 and Q2 of this year, they saw an increase in referrals from Google and actually a slight decrease from social. And we'll talk a little bit about the difference between search and social and how those are intertwined, but I found this to be fairly interesting. And search still drives a majority of video views and traffic. However, social drives better engagement, longer viewing times. And so, again, we'll talk about how those interact, but a lot of times search is used as a primary means of discovery, and then social sort of drives that on and on. The other thing is that, you know, this is in regard to publishers, but 40% of consumers who use search end up following that up with social and diving more into that content. So I'm going through these kind of quickly because I don't want to waste too much time. So I do a lot of work with Google and Bing and Yahoo, and last year they all announced that they're actually looking at social signals now. So for a given search result, including video, they're looking at how many likes did that get on Facebook, how many tweets did that get, and actually in some cases we're seeing that it is more influential than actual links. So if you know anything about SEO, building links to your website is important to gain in rankings, and actually nowadays they're looking at social signals just as much and more so. So social is crucial for search discovery, and they're both kind of tying into each other. And this is just to illustrate how important social is. And YouTube is the second largest search engine in the world when it just comes to query volume. And if you look at the amount of data that they have with regard to the social sharing activity of their users, it's kind of astounding. I mean, 150 years of YouTube videos are watched every day on Facebook. So 500 tweets a minute contain YouTube links. So now this is YouTube, but we're seeing very similar numbers with regard to Brightcove, video streams, etc. So search is driving a good amount of discovery, and social is a great way to get engagement, and I think they're both very important. And I'll let who's next?
Tom.
Yeah.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Thomas Dwarak. I'm CMO from Aprico Solutions. We are a venture of Philips Electronics in the Netherlands, and we specialize on content recommendation and content targeting, particularly for video and also particularly in the TV and internet industries. Together with our alliance partner, Axel Springer, Europe's largest media house, we sell a complete recommendation solution to our customers, which are service providers, device manufacturers, but also technology partners. One of them is sitting next to me. And our recommendation service consists of 3 key parts, one of which is our recommendation engine, which comes out of Philips Research. Secondly, we take advantage of Axel Springer's core business by providing high-quality editorial and metadata services to our customers, as well as an alternative path to monetize our technology through targeted advertisement and targeted advertisement services. And if you're interested in getting more information, just pop on our website, aprico.tv. And as mentioned already, one of our valued partner, Irdeto. We're working on a very, very interesting project together with them, and I think Vanessa is going to run you through this.
Yep, great. I'm just going to go up there as well. Is that my video? That's
Is it queued up?
thank you. Let's do it. Run across here.
You need to press stop so it doesn't play mine straight
I
away.
think I need to do something, don't I?
Unless you...
Sorry, they put a marketing person up here. I'm not Cedric, as you saw. Unfortunately, my colleague has put me in here today. So if we start this, and then I'll just run through it. Do I need to do something on the main screen? Okay. Is it control?
Is there sound on it?
Is there sound? Sorry? Where's the sound? Sorry.
Is somebody muted it?
Haven't touched anything, promise. Okay, let me just put this on pause and then we can just tell you about us. Well, actually, one of my colleagues was in the previous session, Christopher Scholson, and I used to work for Christopher up until a few months ago when we now worked into an online team and a DTV team, digital TV team. And I look after the marketing for our broadband services and solutions. And as get my Toms, and my Toms is not muddled up here, but it's a great name anyway in the search business. With Aprico as one of our partners, what we've done is we've taken some API out of our core broadband services and products, which is all about content management, security, distribution, monetization, and we've put that into the cloud as a service platform. So for Irdeto, we're moving from products and solutions into services, which is quite a shift. We've also worked with third-party companies like, as I say, Aprico, Acedo Broadband, and so on and so forth, to create actually reference applications and experiences, primarily for pay TV operators, but also for content companies, so that they can create this kind of a discovery journey, we say that, of content, and appealing, as Christopher mentioned in the previous session, to the vast range of people that actually use pay TV services, from a TV traditionalist that just wants to zap, through to someone who's a media master, that's someone who just may be wanting to use an iPad to personalize and all that good stuff. So we created a bit of a video here. Has this got sound on it now, do you think? Oh gosh, yeah. Maybe you can turn that down a bit as well. Thank you. And what actually happened is that Irdeto has as well its own consumer research panel. We have a community space, community of a couple of hundred people over 10 countries. And what we can do is we actually put business cases, user cases, we test stuff into this community. So when we created our series of apps and these experiences, these user experiences, we put them into the community and we said, what do you think of this? And they came back, love it, hate it, whatever. And then we updated it and we've developed now this reference application and experience. So some of those include, you know, having a remote control actually built into your applications so that you can zap and change your channels or discover your channels or get a bit more information, through to something that's very, very personalized, where you can have all your social recommendation integrated into your experience. And what we've also done is built that in so that the operator can include on top of that their own recommendation as well, so that you can have your own community, but the community at large recommending content to you and sharing your experiences. And this is incredibly powerful for pay TV operators who are in a very competitive position right now to you know, keep their businesses in many cases. So yeah, Irdeto's been around forever, 40 years, I guess, from the CA business. The broadband space has been around for over 10 years. And I originally come from Intrigue, which was our broadband service that was acquired by the company 4 or 5 years ago. And this is going on a bit longer than I hoped. But yeah, we're working with all kinds of pay TV operators. In Europe, Viasat. We're working with Sky. We're working with, of course, MultiChoice Africa. We share a parent company of Naspers. And in the Asia-Pac market, Astro, Foxtel, and so on and so forth. So maybe I can put the video on and let that do the talking now. That would be great. This is the service I was talking about. Thank you very much. Right, I'll try and get you back to where...
Oh, I need to
sorry.
pause to...
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Ah! Sorry, Tom. So there's nothing disruptive.
No problem. So what I was going to do, so I'm Tom, I'm going to introduce myself. I was the founder of TV Genius. We're again another content discovery platform we talk about. So it's about search, recommendations, social discovery. We've deployed by around 30 different operators. And I think we've got access, so we've got millions and millions of people using our services, mostly across Europe. We're bought by a company called Red Bee Media at the beginning of August, and we've been doing some research since then. I'm basically going out to consumers, saying, what do you think of these new content discovery experiences which are coming along, and trying to get their responses. So what I was just going to do is play a little video. It kind of introduces Red Bee a little bit, and goes through the market research, some sound bites from the market research. And I won't say anything when it finishes.
Red Bee Media is one of the world's leading media management companies, providing multi-platform technology and creative solutions to broadcasters, content creators, content rights holders, platform operators, and brand owners. Our industry is rapidly evolving, with new technologies and platforms offering more and more opportunities to engage and interact with audiences. In response, we have embarked on a journey of discovery into what the media landscape might look like in 2020. Here's a snapshot of some of our in-home consumer research, so you can hear firsthand what today's consumers expect and want from the media industry of tomorrow.
Google TV would be good because it has the search option, which will search across all the channels.
I like the idea in the future of being able to use a tablet to control the television.
I had a demo of a Connect TV, and straight away I thought, this is for me.
I just wish that my television watching could be the same as it is with music now.
I mean, I use Amazon a lot, and yeah, if it's sort of, if say we like watching Luther, I suppose if it came up and said, well, there's something similar to Luther, that, something that we wouldn't think of watching, but it would bring it up, and then we could think, oh, we'll give that a go.
You could integrate it with the camera, and it could see you coming in the room. Just switch on to something.
That'd be good.
See, I quite like using social media, so I think if I was watching a programme and I could see kind of a side panel on maybe the device in front of me rather than on my TV, and I could have a conversation with my friends via Facebook, or I could comment on things while the programme's happening, I'd really like that.
I suppose I quite like it to kind of know my patterns automatically without, when you set a series record or something, maybe for it to monitor the kind of stuff you're watching, how long you're watching it for, and then recommending stuff to you.
As long as it's a genuine recommendation based on stuff that you like. If they're all going to start being able to pay to push a programme in front of you, I certainly wouldn't like that.
The thing I like about the cloud services is being able to store things, and there's that security.
I'd say to the people that are making these new developments in TV to just make it easy to navigate and easy to use, and take into consideration personalising the features, and also making sure that the search navigation is easy.
start with sort of an overview type question. You know, and as I said at the opening, you know, perhaps in an ideal world with another track of sessions, we would have separated search from recommendation and discovery and social. But in a way, I'm glad that we're all here together, because I think a good place to start is how do search and social differ from each other? You know, and how can they work together?
Between search and social, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting, if I could start with search for video versus search for other content, what we're finding, and I'm sorry I don't have the data to reference right here, but people typically do a search to find a video that they're interested in, but then they don't go back to the search engine and refine their search to find additional content like they do with text and images. They end up browsing from that point on. And so sites that do a good job of recommending content, that use social signals to do that, like YouTube, for example, drive a lot more engagement and a lot more discovery after the initial search. So I guess between the two, I would say making sure that on the website or the content owner's website that they're providing a good browsing experience and a good social recommendation experience beyond the search to continue to drive that.
Well, from my point of view, I think I have a little bit of different approach on search. I do believe, and also in the studies we did and the user field trials we did, is what we experienced, particularly in a TV environment, search is not very much appreciated. And we also saw, let's say, the huge success of Google TV once they launched their services in the US. So I think the biggest difference from our perspective between search and social is it depends on where the user want to start from. As Mark already said rightfully, if you search for something, you're in an active mode, you are looking for something actively, but with recommendations, including also social TV or social recommendations, you can also take a little bit the lean backward mode. So you can say, I would like to be inspired by somebody and find content or browse the content through somebody on a more relaxed and lean backward way. So search, again, I think very active on internet and active devices, not so much on TV as far as we believe.
Sure. I'm primarily focused, on the TV business. So, you know, anyone who's got a pay TV subscription is used to being able, well, dare I say it, the dear old EPG. So in the services service platform and the experiences that we've created recently, we needed to include the EPG into that, but what we found was that search with that set-top box and being able to get the companion devices to help that experience was really relevant. So on the iPad, you can go in and you can go into the EPG and you can expand the information, and then the rich content comes up from the broadband into that, and you made search much more in-depth experience, and then you can build great functionality behind it, like recording and watch later and catch up TV and all that stuff. But it was also search that's not just through what the operator has put out there, it's search into your, as you were saying earlier, into your social recommendation and really blending it. So it's a really, we're at a crossroads right now, and so you've kind of also a chaotic one. So you're trying to blend the broadband and the broadcast experiences, and you've got to make it really easy, but it should be across both what the operator is suggesting and what your friends are saying.
Well, I kind of iterate. I think search in a TV environment is really simple. You know, when you want to watch something, you've no idea when it's on. I think there was a World Cup, I can't remember if it was World Cup or Euro, it must have been World Cup qualifier. England played Kazakhstan, and we had huge spikes on the searches for all of the services we were on, people trying to find Kazakhstan. The reason I remember it is because no one could spell Kazakhstan correctly. So the guys that looked off the synonyms had an absolute nightmare dealing with it. But it wasn't on a normal channel, it might have been on Sky Sports 3 or something like that. And people were searching for it because they knew it was on, they wanted to watch it, but they didn't know where they could get it. And I think search in a TV environment, it's really important. It's low frequency for people to do it. You know, they don't do it all the time, but when they do it, it's really important that they can find what they're interested in. You know, social at the moment, social is just what people are doing. How many people here, I can see people in the audience on laptops and on their phones. How many of you guys are using social networks at the moment? People are using social networks right now when they're listening to the talk. You know, people are used to doing that. They're used to sitting in front of the TV using the social networks. it's going to be different. Are people going on their Facebooks and they're saying, hey, is there anything good to watch on TV tonight? That could be a social experience. So they're saying, do you know when the England-Kazakhstan match is? And that's search through social. Social is just what people are doing. No. Search is about finding stuff.
So I'm curious with television, because I completely agree, search isn't being used nearly as much in television. Is that because people want a lean-back experience in front of the television, or and maybe it's both this, but is it more so the search interfaces that exist today? Because I don't think I've seen a good search interface, including Google TV.
So I think I would say I think one of the reasons that people aren't using search is because it's quite difficult. Yeah. But I mean also, there's no equivalent of the UPG for the internet. You don't just go onto the internet and think, hey, what am I going to do now? How am I going to waste the next 2 hours of my life? That's what you do with TV. You switch it on, you think, what's on channel 1 tonight? What's on channel 2? What's on channel 3? If you look in Europe, 60% of the viewing is those top 5 channels. So there's not so much need for search at the moment. Consumers aren't crying out for it, except in those occasions where they can't find what they want.
Well, a little bit to the contrary there. Again, our technology, came out of, 10, 15 years research done by Philips, so about the user experience, content navigation, content recommendation, etc. And what we did back then is we made also field trials with 4 people households about how they use recommendations and content discovery tools. And what we figured in the first release, where we supplied them with our devices, we didn't have any search function in there. And the first thing actually the users were requesting was search. So half of our audience was asking, why can't I search for content on my device? Because they're just used to it. At the end of the day, 5% of them really used the search function. So it's definitely a selling point. If you don't have search in your TV or in your TV experience, you will sell less. But at the end of the day, people don't use it that much.
We wanted to actually not have an EPG at all in our user experiences and our apps. But our customers were like, you must be joking. We're a pay TV operator, we've got to have an EPG. I mean, you can do that really cool zoom in thing and have that metadata behind it, and they got really excited about it. To be seen how that's really going to help, but with the smart recommendation technology behind it makes it more relevant.
Maybe just one point back to your question about, is it all about the lean backward? As far as we're concerned, TV is a completely different beast than PC, than mobile phones, than tablets, etc. And it was actually, I think, last year here at the Streaming Media event where I was on a panel with mainly online guys, I think together with you. Mm-hmm. And I remember the funny statement of one of the online TV platform guys who said, the biggest trouble we have is bringing broadcast content onto the internet because it's made for passive consumption. And people on the PC, when they watch something, they want to do something next to it. So it's exactly the other way around. So, the problem we have on the TVs when you bring internet content on the TVs, that sometimes there are interactions required which you simply don't do on the TV. And the other way around. So broadcast content is too passive also to simply consume on the PC, at least coming from those guys.
I mean, I can't really accept the idea that broadcast content isn't interactive. I think it's a ridiculous statement. I mean, if you look at, if you look at the big thing, the reason that live TV is now growing, everyone was forecasting the death of linear TV, and the reason it hasn't died is because it's become interactive. And what's enabled this has been the rise of social networks like Facebook and Twitter, and you have all of these new formats and concepts coming around which are designed to be interactive. Yep. You can't tell me the X Factor isn't interactive.
Okay, so a few of them are getting it right, but there's a real desperate need to get the content creators to understand these new formats, however simple and obvious they may be to us. There still is a minefield for these guys who are making great discovery programs, for instance. How cool is it if they could really do something that enables people to use all the screens that are being pushed to them? And I think it's that kind of new format stuff still's got a long way to go to be really understood by the content creators. But in terms of social interaction during a game, you can also put a game engine behind it, like we've done, so that you can actually throw up, we did something with Germany's Next Top Model, and while the game's playing, while the program is playing, on your iPad, you can go into the app and you can see, what she's wearing. You can choose to buy it, you can bid against it, you can share it on your social network, you can rate her, you can throw her off the show. That's all really good stuff for that particular kind of content. So you can make a game out of it.
But it's not just reality shows. I mean, so one of the things that we do is we actually monitor social media activity around TV, and we do that because we think a good recommendation might be what people are talking about. Yeah? But actually there's a whole analytics thing that comes out of the back of that. And it's not just game shows that drive traffic on social media. I mean, drama is the big one. You know, the new dramas that come out, and these guys who are commissioning them and producing them, they're thinking, you know, when they make Downton Abbey, you know, which for people who don't know about it is kind of a World War I period drama, they're thinking about how can they drive social engagement. Yeah? And you've got people who are the stars of these programs on Twitter as well, on Facebook, and people are engaging with them. So I mean, I think if these content creators are managing to get that interaction on social networks, I don't really buy that TV isn't an interactive experience.
Yeah, but I think you said it before, it's the experience which is getting more interactive. It's not the content itself which is getting interactive. And this is also the challenge for the service providers today, is how to bring the interaction into the TV. And we've also seen the interactive TV, as they were called, or connected TV as they're called now, is it just didn't take off. Interactive TV didn't take off because of the content or the device. It's now coming with multi-screen for the first time. Operators, device manufacturers, whomever, they are now able to enable interactive TV. So I completely agree on the point that the TV experience is getting much more interactive, but still from a content perspective, 90% movies, series, etc., anything rather than reality shows or game shows, I think still is very, very passive and will remain passive, and it will be around in the next 10, 20 years still.
But does that matter? As long as you can put some interactivity around content, as you're saying, there's opportunities there to monetize this, which is why we're in this game anyway, right? So if you can actually do that and get the audience viewers back up and monetize that library content, that is sweet music to an operator or content owner's ears.
I think the operators are actually at a bit of a risk of being left behind here.
They
because
are.
I mean, I would say that yes, I think the operators are doing less with interactivity and they're doing less with companion applications. Yeah, I don't agree that the content owners. I mean, Lost was a great example. You know, so how long ago did Lost finish?
No,
it's not new.
No, it actually kickstarted a lot of what we did at Entry. So that would have been 5 or 6 years ago.
Absolutely. I mean,
and Disney had it everywhere.
5 or 6 years ago, Lost. When Lost wasn't on, they had all this great interactivity between the series to keep viewers engaged online when it wasn't on. You know, they were the trailblazers in this area. But you know, lots of the new shows, what they're trying to do is, yes, it still costs a lot of money to make TV. So most shows you can't afford to have on all the time. So what do you do in the gap between the next series? You do stuff online, you do stuff on mobile. And the content owners and the content producers are putting a lot of effort into this area.
There's some are. I think there's still, as I said, I think there's some core needs that's done that could really make it smarter. But I guess that comes with time. It's still really quite early days. And in the comment about the pay TV operators, Christopher, my colleague in the previous session, mentioned Viasat is a very important customer to us. So it's MultiChoice and Astro in Malaysia, and they're doing actually very early TV everywhere, but they're getting it right. I mean, US is of course blazing the trail in that area, but other markets are doing it, and they have their own context and their own situations. And listening to a presentation from Sky last week and Sky Go and what they're doing, it is getting there, but it's more around the overall experience than perhaps, as you're saying, the content itself.
Well, I think the risk for the platforms is all the new startups in this kind of space. You've got Zbox, which is launching in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah.
You've got Miso, you've got GetGlue, you've got Into Now. You've got a whole bunch of people in this kind of social discovery space launching companion applications. And I think if the operators aren't careful, those guys are going to eat their breakfast.
Yeah, but I could go on a discussion on that, but I think that's our business, helping these guys to remain competitive and compelling.
Probably ours too.
Yeah, so it's very, it is a threat to them, and they've got to move fast, and that's one big need for these guys. They've got to move quickly, and they've got to scale quickly. And what we're seeing is actually quite interesting, that when they do that, like Viasat, they're actually being able to go into new markets very, very quickly as well, because they can scale their solutions. So you look at the Viasat plans now across device and across markets, really ambitious compared to broadband's, OTT's enabling that for them. But yes, they do, and of course the over-the-top brands, but they still have the billing relationships. They still have the opportunity to do it, and they just got to move fast.
But that's not going to secure their installed base. I mean, today, I agree, I mean, they are somehow the gatekeeper between, the TV content and the consumer. But this is going to change. I mean, these startups will disrupt and definitely help the operator to innovate in this area, and we see it around. I mean, I don't know, 3 years ago or 4 years ago when we started the venture out of Philips, there were almost no RFQs or RFIs in this industry whatsoever. It was a kind of, to whom do we talk next to educate them about the needs in now and the next days. Nowadays, I mean, they're popping in every single day. So the operators feel the urge, I think. Are they doing the right thing? I don't know. I mean, look at the UK. I think the most advanced experience here, that's my personal opinion, probably is still Virgin with their TiVo service. Is it the future? I think they're far off. It is something which has existed for 10 years, which was good probably back then. But it's still the benchmark in the industry, which is, I think, a little bit alarming in my respect.
Mark, you mentioned earlier that in your experience, and I think many people would agree that you haven't seen a good TV search interface. What would a good TV search interface look like to you, or how would it work differently than anything that's out there now? What is it that?
That's a great question. That's a really good question. I guess what I'm thinking is, so I have a Sony connected television, I have Google TV, I have Boxy and Roku, and for the Sony television, which is fairly good interface, with the remote control, I have to go A and then scroll over and D, and so I thought it was pretty interesting that there were a lot of respondents that said they were interested in search, but very few that used it, and I just wonder how much of that is the interface. I think a lot of it's the remote. So maybe if there was a voice search of some sort, but I think really tying it to the social component is important, especially as more and more content is available. The shows like Revision 3 web television series, how do you know what to go see, if you're interested in something? So I don't know, I'd be interested in what they say about search interface. You probably have a good...
Maybe two comments there. One comment is on the interface. I think most of the problem in search on TV is the interface. Again, coming back to the lean back experience, if you can make it lean back, they will use it more. We've experienced with users, they don't like to talk to machines, so they don't like to talk to a TV. It's also a little bit of a problem. It's still a 10-foot experience, so you're a little bit away as well. So it's probably easy to talk to your phone, and I'm curious to see how Apple is doing with their new series. But they don't want to talk to the TV. The second comment I would like to make is also coming back to Tom's video. What I was a little bit actually surprised with is that people also, it was mentioned in there that they would like to have cameras around their TV to see who is coming in there, etc., which is great, to maybe change recommendations or change these sort of things. But what we've experienced is, what do you do with respect to content discovery recommendation if I'm sitting on my couch, suddenly my wife is coming by, so the face recognition recognized the two of you, what to recommend? I'm interested in action movies, she's interested in soap operas, to use kind of cliches here. So, the next best thing would be an action soap. I haven't heard of one, maybe except of 24 maybe. So these things also don't really work, and we have tested this also with our research because they had exactly the same. They said, well, we don't need intelligent recommendations. We just merge those profiles. We said, go ahead. Here's profile A. Here's profile B. Just merge them, and we tested mathematically, not personally me, but the engineers, and it was no fit whatsoever of what they're watching together and what they're watching separately. Because if they're together on the couch, they actually work on a social compromise between the two of them what to watch.
I would say the best search interface on our TV isn't on the TV. Everyone's already sitting in front of the TV with their iPhones out or with their laptops open. That's the best place to do the search. We're talking about the best TV experience. Quick plug from one of my customers. So Freeview launched yesterday their new Freeview HD Discovery app. If you're on iTunes, go to the App Store, search for Freeview HD, download it. And that's a great discovery application. It's got fantastic search and it's got good recommendations. It'll tell you what's trending on Twitter at the moment. It's a great holistic TV discovery experience, and that's launched by a platform, and it's a platform with only 30 channels. But still, there's a lot of rich content there for people to discover, and I think that's a great experience. It's very interesting. Thomas explaining the limitations of their recommendation engine. That they can't manage to do those recommendations for the group together. We've never had any problems doing that, I would just say, but maybe that's because our algorithms are a little different to yours.
It's hard being in the middle between these two sometimes.
I was actually not referring to our technology. I was referring to recommendation engines in general, and it does work. Yeah, it does work to a certain extent, but you cannot reach a threshold with this kind of approach. But I don't want to go too much into this. And if it works, I would like to see it because I could probably argue with it.
I'd be happy to sell you one.
Yeah, we should talk about it later on maybe. But coming back to the search question, I do see a lot of. I was in the US last week. I do see a lot of new entries in the market now, really making search very, very approachable, also from a lean-backward device. I forgot the name of the company, but where you can, with very simple arrow navigation and predictive search, basically help the user without navigating on a virtual keyboard, having a very, very easy approach to search. So these things are coming now, and I'm very certain that Google TV will have an answer to their, let's say, missed approach in the first launch.
I think it's about a gradual content discovery process as well. I totally support the use of companion devices. We had a bit of a debate earlier about, I think the remote control is going to die finally, and rest in peace and go away. I think we can all use our apps and our companion devices, but it's not going to happen overnight, of course. But it should be that discovery process I talked about earlier for a traditional user through to someone who's got much more personalization and desire and need to do that. So I think, I'm hoping that we've achieved that with our applications as well. But I'm always quite interested as well about motion sensors and what PrimeSense developed in the Kinect Xbox, for instance, to be able to swipe through your screen the same way my 2-year-old's always swiping, or was when he was 2, swiping at the TV after learning how to reprogram the iPad at 2. So, that whole motion sensors I think is going to be really, really interesting. And about reaching a compromise, we have to try and do that every day in our house. And so you actually reach compromise on the devices. So you end up watching maybe TV bits of it together. And again, it's around the program, right? So if I'm watching something like The Voice, which is a huge success in Holland where I live, and in the US, and my daughter is actually going to be sitting at the computer, or she'll have the iPad, and she'll be looking at all the streams of content coming through the social networks and all the additional content and the back catalogue stuff. She's actually hardly watching. She kind of watches it when they're actually singing, but she wants to see what the other stuff is going around. And it's fascinating. I think my husband's the only one listening to actually what anyone sounds like. But that actually is quite an interesting family experience. Short, but interesting.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of the recommendation engines that are being built are sort of mining online data and online mentions as opposed to, interaction with the television device. So, what's the number one thing that content owners should do? Is it focusing on online social media and engaging as much as they can so that influences the recommendation engines, or?
So the best way to get people to watch your content is to get it in a prime time slot in a big TV channel. And that's not going to change for a long time, I don't think. And I actually think in TV, I mean, there was so Sky reorganised their EPG, and they pushed a bunch of their channels up the EPG, and they had a huge boost in what we're seeing. And being close to the top of the EPG and on at the right time gets audiences. If you look in a video on demand environment, it's about being on that front page. Unfortunately, most video on demand services at the moment don't have a recommendation engine behind it. You have 8 or 9 movies or shows that are picked by someone who works in marketing. And when the punter comes in, if they like the movies that have been chosen by the person in marketing, they watch one. If they don't, then they don't. As recommendation engines turn out, it's going to be more about what's being personally recommended to you. And I think if you look, once you start to get to that environment, it's going to be based on what other people are watching. So actually, the main thing is you need to try and drive people to watch things, and more people talking about on social networks. But I guess on TV, one of the things, if you look at why people watch TV shows, it's not just because they've seen it in the EPG. It's because they've seen a billboard for it. It's because they've seen a trailer for it. They've read about it. Friends have said they've watched it.
It's the old rules of marketing. It's those 3 touch points, right? So.
And I would like to touch on the point also Tom made before. I completely agree. If you bring it on prime time on a TV channel, then this is where people will watch, and that's also why we came up with our proposition of a personal channel, because then you can have your own virtual channel, and the recommendation engine will bring the content which you're interested at your prime time, whenever you're interested in. So this is very much true. So you need to get it, and it's the same for VOD as well. It's you need to get it upfront for the user. They shouldn't search for it. They shouldn't find something. It should be delivered to them automatically and served up for them.
And that's for the people who really want it totally recommended to them, and that's a customized experience. And some people still want to go and surprise me, switch it on.
Because one of the things I'd be interested to know, Mark, is when you were talking about so much of this traffic comes from search, do you know why people are searching for those terms?
Well, and I guess that data really had nothing to do with internet television. Yeah. So it was more with Brightcove video streams. But I don't know the answer, but I can tell you that the type of content that people search for versus browse is quite different. Mm-hmm. So how-to content, informational, that's the sort of stuff that people are searching for quite often. But they do search a lot for television shows and a lot for movies, and so those are pretty big drivers of search, at least on Google.
Interesting.
If you can't get a prime spot, then as a content owner, what can you do to get more views via social, or maybe not the television, but.
So I'd say, you've just got to go I was at a conference in the US this time last year, so the Media Innovation Summit. I'm back at it again this year. And they had a whole bunch of these guys who do these online TV channels and on-time TV production, and they make formats that work for online. And so they have these great things, short-form content. But the really depressing thing is, all of them just wanted to get a major network deal. Mm-hmm. And for them, they were doing stuff for online because they couldn't get the major network deal. They were hoping to get enough traction online so that they could get onto TV. And I haven't seen anyone yet who's really going all out. Yes, I want to do a real for TV deal. Real for online service. I guess with YouTube launching linear channels, probably just going to be TV content. Are YouTube going to be, if you're an independent content producer and you're producing a TV, is it going to be easier for you to get a slot on YouTube's linear service, or it is to be able to get something, 3 or 4 pages down the EPG on Sky? I don't know.
I think if you can bring a format in that brings and drives the one that ultimately drives the ratings, and there isn't a rating service across all these platforms anyway, but if you were to drive, the one that could drive the viewership and make the most ad revenue, I know it sounds obvious, but create the format that goes across all those platforms and then continues to drive people back to the TV, your format is bound to catch the attention of the pay TV operators.
Coming back to your question, I think the first thing they need to do is they need to broaden the distribution channels. So also, as Tom said before, is they have now 1, maybe 2 routes to the market. They're still hindering innovations like viewing on iPads, viewing on tablets, viewing on mobile phones, DRM issues, etc., etc. So I think they need to solve this first. In America, they're starting already. HBO is having a big launch of their tablet app. So I think that's the first thing they need to be more discoverable on all the different platforms. If you are interested in a movie and you can only find it maybe in 1 or in 2 VOD libraries or somewhere at in 2 years on a TV station, doesn't help to be discovered. So that's the ultimate thing they really need to do.
We've only got a few minutes left, so are there any questions from the audience? Yes.
Just wanted to ask about recommendation, whether anyone is using content analysis. So is there any value in content analysis from the recommendation?
So it's something that we've looked at. We always research. So when we started out doing the recommendation engine bit, we looked at all of the different potential technologies that you could use. Yeah. The content analysis, we found there is potentially some use when you're going within the video. Yeah. So basically, you're going into an individual bit, say, okay, at this spot. Yeah. So basically, what you end up doing is you do text-to-speech automatic analysis. Yeah. The problem that you get is you get too many entities thrown out. So actually, one of the things as part of Red B, we actually now do all of the subtitling for a whole massive amount of content across Europe. We're doing a lot more analysis of these sort of timed text files. But what you find is you still really need a bit of human interaction
around it to understand the context. You know, are they talking about Bob Dylan because Bob Dylan's relevant at that time or not?
I'm thinking more about broader parameters, like, for instance, I can't watch EastEnders because there's too many cuts and it makes me a bit sick. So could notice, you know, if you have a parameter, how many cuts per minute, and then it starts to learn that you don't like things. You like things that have got longer shots, that look a certain way, or sound a certain way.
I think for the moment it's not too much in this direction. I think the market still needs to appreciate what recommendations can do for them, and how to use recommendations. I mean, that's the biggest problem. And what we see, the first thing, particularly with content owners or MSOs in this particular case, they start on the VOD library because they want to increase their revenues, etc., etc. So it needs to give them a lift. Content analysis, I think, will come in the next step of recommendations, and it also depends on which algorithms you use. Sometimes you do use algorithms where you need to have high-quality metadata, including editorial services there as well, which I think Tom referred to as human touch. Yeah, and their analysis, I think, will come in as well. But I would not see this as a real, let's say, key priority right now for recommendations.
Some guys did it on music, didn't they? I can't remember their name anymore. So kind of, I think, iTunes got it licked genius, didn't they, on music?
That's more about what,
yeah, but people actually did it on, people did content analysis of the music, of the audio tracks on music, working. Anyone remember the name of the company that did that?
Is it Grace?
Yeah, it was Grace Note, but you have it now in video as well, with video, watermarking and these sort of things. That's coming, but that's more, again, to the security aspect rather than to recommendation. And again, this will naturally come into all the technologies, and these will work together. And particularly on long tail content like internet, where you do not have any content information or very little content information, or sometimes wrong content information on it, you do use content analysis tools to basically get the basic level of metadata attached to the content.
I think one of the things in all of these recommendation engines, you end up with a law of diminishing returns. If you look at something like the Netflix prize, they were looking at a 10% increase in the prediction rate, which was a pretty minimal increase in terms of where they were. And how many thousands upon thousands of man-hours went into getting that increase? I think, very minimal returns on the time invested, which is why they've put $1 million on the table. Because, they'd have had to spend a lot more time than that to get all of those researchers looking at that if they'd actually been paying for it. And I think you get a law of diminishing returns eventually. But I'm not aware of any content analysis on TV recommendations at the moment.
All right, well, unfortunately, we're out of time. So thanks to all of our panelists. I think it was a great discussion, and I wish we had another hour, 2 hours we could just keep talking about it.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you.